Welcome to Trinity Radio. I'm Braxton Hunter, and I'm way too loud. And over there is my co-host on this show, Dr. Whoops, something's out of whack. Dr. Jonathan Pritchett. Say hello, Dr. Jonathan Pritchett.
Going so smoothly.
Well, it was. Things had gotten moved around, and now I don't even know what's happened.
I don't know what's happening either. Welcome to the show. We're glad you're here. We're glad we're here, finally.
Yeah. I don't even have it on the right thing. It doesn't matter. We're just leaving it like this.
Against all odds, we're streaming.
Yeah. Why do you say that?
You know, this really is like, remember that old banner that we had with you and I sitting in the Millennium Falcon?
Mm-hmm.
This really is the Millennium Falcon. I mean, we're always trying to...
It's really more like something a few steps up from the Millennium Falcon, but the driver doesn't know what he's doing. Pilot doesn't know what he's doing.
Yeah, if you could only just... smack it really good and
what? Oh, smack the computer?
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I'm going to make you look a little better here right at the beginning, at least.
That's a hard thing to do, but...
I know. You work with what you got. Not the point you were making, I take it. All right. Mm-hmm. Hello, everyone. And here to start things off is today we're going to be talking about some of the data on supernatural stuff that goes on, paranormal events that people think are happening. And we're going to look at some of that data. But first, Jim Amberg, the channel angel, is here. Thank you for that $20 super chat. Hey. We so appreciate that. He says, happy Friday, y'all. I added a y'all kind of there, but it was an all. But in any case, all right. Glad you guys are here. Jesus is your co-pilot. We know who said that. And the Faithiest Atheist, we also know who said that, says, hello, glad you all are here. Zach, you need to go big time and get a full-time producer. You're right.
Wouldn't that be nice?
And Mr. Green's a little bit late, but we're glad that he is here as well. All right. So today, let's look at some research, Pritchett, and then after we look at that, or some survey data, and then after that, people can ask their questions about whatever they want, right? We don't care. Whatever you want to ask us. You can even ask us about things we don't know about. We might say we don't know, or we might give you an opinion. Still could be a fun time. Yeah. So let's take a look at, you have anything you want to say to the audience, Pritchett?
No.
Well, that's the business way of saying talk to the audience for a second.
Oh, gotcha. Pritchett. Okay, well, you know what? I really did enjoy our conversation with Nick Quint. So we discussed Romans 8, the two of us with Nick Quint on the New Testament Theologist channel. So
yeah, so go subscribe to that if you want to see that.
Right, and I guess it'll come out in whenever. But
great advertisement. Thank you for doing that. Now that we're back to this survey, I'm going to put this article in the description, but it's not there now. And this is from YouGov America. As far as I can tell, this is a very large group that collects survey data and has outlets for doing that globally. And it says 2/3 of Americans say they've had a paranormal encounter. The author of the senior survey data journalist is Taylor Orth, I guess. And we're not going to read all of the preamble, but we will read right at the beginning. Have you ever felt, and the title of the article is 2/3 of Americans say they've had a paranormal encounter. Have you ever felt an eerie, unexplained presence, Jonathan Pritchett? Seen the lights flicker at unexpected moments, heard a whisper from a mysterious source, and not when I've done all those horrible things to you. Mm-hmm. According to a recent YouGov poll, 67% of Americans believe they've had at least one of 13 paranormal experiences polled about. Half of Americans who say they've had a paranormal encounter believe they have one of seven paranormal abilities asked about. And at this point, I just want to say, we're skeptical too. We're just looking at this with you, and then we will make commentary. But because we're bringing this to you to discuss, and because we're the Christians who believe in supernatural stuff, you might presume, oh, you agree with all this stuff mentioned in the article is happening and is real. Not saying that. There's some stuff in here that I'm not sure I would buy either, but we're just presenting it right now. So how many Americans have had a paranormal encounter? Well, they have the different types of encounters kind of listed out here. So some of these are less impressive, probably in most people's minds, and they get more impressive as they go, as it gets to a lesser percentage of the population that have claimed to have experienced these things. Mm-hmm. Feeling a presence or unknown energy. Is that like, now a presence, I get that. Like you could, if you get a feeling that someone's like watching you or something, maybe there's something akin to that. But an unknown energy, is that like adult speak for vibe? Like you got a vibe? Is that basically what
I suppose
that means? You're not too interested in that one. Let's see. Jim Amberg, by the way, says, I have experienced a few supernatural things and know a ton of folks who have as well. By the way, one of the reasons we're doing this is because we have a new podcast that you should go check out on Apple Podcasts right now, but it's going to be elsewhere soon. And that is called Supernatural Stories. And I developed that with another person here at Trinity, Andrew Armstrong. Andrew, aka Andy Armstrong, and we have a supernatural story on there from a young woman named Ashley. You'll want to go check that out and subscribe. And if you like it, give us a good review. So that's kind of partly why we're doing this episode. But thanks for that, Jim Amberg, and thank you for this super chat, Eddie Vasquez.
Praise the Lord.
$5. Praise the Lord. PTL, y'all. All right, let's get back to this.
Yeah, feeling a presence or unknown energy. I don't even know why that would count as a paranormal, because you could have that.
You could feel a literal presence that's actually there. Yeah. Or a radio wave could somehow, maybe you could perceive that in a physiological way.
Yeah, or we live in a surveillance state, and you know that your TV is watching you.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
Okay,
hearing an unexplained sound or music. Right now that... we could say, depending on what that is, like, who cares, right? Like, there's lots of unidentified sounds I hear every day, right? But these are ones that these people take to be paranormal, I would say supernatural. In fact, let's go down here and take a look at.
Let's
give examples.
Let me read off. Go back up for a minute. Smelling an unexplained odor. I don't know why that's okay. Hearing the voice of someone who wasn't there. Stop if you've ever experienced these, Braxton. Feeling an unexplained change.
Wait, hearing a voice of someone who wasn't there. Well, obviously, on my worldview, if I'm hearing a voice of even like if I felt like I heard the voice of God, I would still think I was hearing the voice of someone that's there. But on their terms, maybe that would
feeling an unexplained change in temperature. 28%. Seeing lights or other devices.
That's evidence for climate change, right?
Yeah. Seeing lights or other devices turn on and off without explanation. Seeing an object move without explanation. Yeah. Seeing unexplained orbs of light. Are
you familiar enough with the lore around like some of this stuff popularly?
No.
Why they would like sometimes when you take a picture, I think one of the explanations for this phenomenon is dust particles get kind of blown up because of non-focus or because of light hitting them right. But people will see sometimes these look like orbs hanging there in the picture, and so that's become a part of the ghost type phenomenon. People have seen that in their own photographs, no doubt, and so they class it as that. But also the temperature change, that's like a ghost thing. If there's a ghost or a spirit or something, there's supposed to be like a change in temperature sometimes. Go ahead.
Yeah. Seeing a door open or close without explanation, which I would tick that one off because that's the closest I've had to what I believe to be a supernatural experience in my own life.
Okay.
And seeing a ghost or seeing a spirit or ghost, seeing an angel, seeing unexplained smoke, seeing a demon. So
you've had none of these. You've had funny smoke in Evansville and everywhere else in America every day, it seems. But go ahead.
So you've had none of these experiences?
I didn't say I hadn't had any. I was just laying them out.
Stop me when you.
Oh, I see. I thought you were just trying to like.
No, stop me when you say you've had one of these experiences, whether you consider it a paranormal encounter or not. Because the only thing on this list that I would consider a paranormal experience was seeing a door open or close without explanation, and I wasn't.
Famously, I've talked about the fact that there are 3 or 4 times in my life where I think I experienced something supernatural. Okay, and it was more like, and I know this won't be impressive to others, but that's fine. Feeling a presence or unknown energy, but it was the religiously informed circumstances in which this happened, in which I wasn't looking for. I've talked about this before, and atheists have sometimes referenced me when I've talked about this and said things that I don't think I said about this experience. So when you hear someone else talking about something we say on here, just don't presume it is necessarily true. But go
to the source of the person who actually had the experience and said what it was like, as opposed to other people telling him what it was. But
anyway, what's true is that I was in a very dark place, having experienced something that there are people who have like gotten suicidal over similar things.
Yeah.
You know?
Now I've told
Okay.
this story before on the show. I can't remember. It's been years now, but can you believe we've been doing this for years?
Did you?
now?
Are you literally just cutting off my explanation of the
Well,
story?
I thought you were finished.
No, I'm not done.
Oh Lord.
I can't. Can you believe, Braxton? You've been telling this story for that long?
Can you believe that you're still talking?
No. So I had an experience where. Well, this is actually answering your question. I had an experience.
You haven't
where,
actually gotten to what it was yet. You're just telling us that you had a situation where you had this experience and blah blah blah. Tell us what it was. Tell them what it was.
I'm endeavoring to. But I was in this absolutely desperate state, and I was not looking to get to have any kind of supernatural experience. I was just in a horrible situation, and I felt a very strong sense that God was present, and it was like, the only way I can describe it, this isn't, I didn't feel this way, but the sense I got was very much like, as silly as it sounds, someone kind of wrapping their arms around you from behind.
Yes.
And I did hear something, but I don't know. I've so often said on the show, I can't say that I've like heard a voice or anything like that, but I've always in my mind felt like a caveat next to that, because I don't know if this was like a strong sense in my head or verbal out loud. That's how strong it was. Because when I got done, what I said, and what I've said many times on the show about this is, I remember telling myself in that moment, like, Braxton, in the future, if you ever experience doubt, just remember that at this moment, your past self is reminding you that in this moment, you are 100%, like as close to Cartesian as you can be. And I have remembered that, because I remember that I was that certain in that moment. So that's, you asked me a weird question. That's probably goes into the first one here.
We were at a hospice when my dad died, right?
Mm-hmm.
And each of the hospice rooms had a heavy door that would open up to the, I guess, a courtyard outside, because it was kind of a horseshoe-shaped hospice, and so every hospice room you could go out into that courtyard in the horseshoe. Mm-hmm. And it's a heavy door with a latch that you have to push the thing in and open, and it opens out, right? Well, less than a minute after my dad passed, that door blew open, which means that the gust would have had to come from in the room, managed to push down the latch and open it outward, right?
But so the feature of the latch is what makes you think it couldn't just be pressure in the building from some other door opening or closing.
And we would have felt that being in the room, since the door opens out, and the door busts open, and then we felt the gust come through from the outside and then leave, and then the door slams. And the several of his family, we were all standing around my dad. We watched him pass. We were singing as he was going out. He was staring at my mom. It was really a touching moment. And then that happened, and it freaked everyone out, you know, because we're like, what in the world?
Yeah.
And running outside to see if somebody had opened the door from outside, which I don't know. I don't think that they were able to be open from the outside. Yeah. So it was just a weird, I mean, at least not without somebody being there to pull it open. And we didn't see anybody, And so it was a really weird experience. And if I had to get, when you're talking about it, you're like, okay, so if this was a supernatural event, I've talked to other people that they said that they have felt similar winds gust when people have passed away, and it's like, everyone seems to think, well, that could have been angels coming through to pick up your dad's soul or something, which never made sense to me. But it was an odd experience. That is the closest I've come to having any sort of paranormal encounter where that happened shortly after my dad died in that context. Mm-hmm. So it's a very, very strange event that kind of stuck with me,
Yeah. I mean, you've told it to me, and I've thought about it before.
I think I told it on the podcast years ago. But
I've got some great questions, and we'll get to those. But right now, let's go ahead and get the super chat that we have from two of them from Faithiest Atheist, who we love dearly, and who says, I realize this is in service to beating naturalism into the ground once and for all. Maybe that will happen. And honestly, good riddance.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Well, he's not done. It's a two-parter.
Oh, okay.
Part two. Super chat part 2. But this might lead to millions of miracle ministries in which one resurrection more or less won't seem so special. It might end up as a drop in the bucket, maybe even forgotten. So like if supernatural stuff became so commonplace, it'd be like, okay, well, big deal.
Well, it actually is commonplace already.
Mm-hmm.
So we it already is.
If it was to the point that everyone agreed it was commonplace, let's say.
Yeah. Well, I mean, 2/3 of people reporting having a supernatural experience just in America alone, and if you expand that to the globe, this is a common occurrence in many other cultures, right? These types of events are probably different kinds than the ones they reported here. So. But one of the things that I said, what's interesting about this for faith,
and after you get done, we'll get back to the survey because there's examples. But go ahead.
About naturalism, surely the 2/3 of people who have experienced this, that are reporting to have experienced something, this has to include some people who identify themselves as atheists. They're just not metaphysical naturalists, right? Mm-hmm. So this isn't necessarily something that excludes atheists, only atheists of a particular kind who are naturalists.
Right, that's right. Yeah.
And so, I mean, it's why I always say, whatever your worldview is, naturalism hasn't earned this. This is the default normal state of the world that is just the neutral ground, and then all of this other stuff that's paranormal or supernatural or stuff, that's the extraordinary, because that's not necessarily most people's experience. Now, you can clap back and say, yeah, but they're misunderstanding their experience, but I have no reason to believe that's actually a valid claim.
Yeah.
Compared to all of the country. And of course, as Christians, we do have a worldview that can account for any and every odd experience that people has that could, very well be an actual, true supernatural event, not even in a Christian context, but Christianity, because of our worldview and because of all the phenomena that we can even trace back to being reported in Scripture itself, we can account for why even non-believers have these sorts of experiences and the source of the power from which all that kind of activity occurs. So.
Good thoughts. All right, let's look at some of the examples, Pritchett. And this will be a Pritchett-heavy episode because I want to get your reaction. See if this impresses you or not, because it might not. So on the first one, on Americans say they felt a presence or unknown energy. Now, I kind of told you what I experienced, and I think it was, once you hear someone talking about it, hopefully you see me talk about it, I think it's clear that can be a pretty vertical to the person that experiences it, even if it's not to you. But here's an example from the study or from the survey. I woke up immediately after my grandfather passed away and felt something was in the room with me. I saw what looked like heat waves hanging in the air beside the bed. Impressed or not impressed?
What do you mean impressed?
If you take it to be true, does that impress you that there may have been something supernatural or no?
Could be.
Okay, I'm going to take that as not impressed. I was laying in my bed in an old apartment I rented. I woke up and it felt like someone was on my chest. I tried to scream and it was like I didn't have a voice. Then all of a sudden the weight was lifted and I found myself on the floor. I never slept in that room again. It could be sleep paralysis, but either way, impressed or not impressed?
That's not the right framing.
Okay.
Interested or not interested?
Okay. Okay.
Yeah.
Interested or not interested?
No, because I've had experiences like that, where I have.
I just saw you experience this in my head.
Yeah, I have felt like something heavy on my chest or something, and it seems to be a carryover from a dream that I was having that I could remember.
What was happening
where
in
I
the
was,
dream?
In a fight or something.
Oh, you're in a fight.
And so I'm always fighting. I'm the hero of my dreams, buddy.
Yeah.
And so.
Who are you fighting?
I have been able to. You try to lend voice to what's going on. Your experience, and all of a sudden nothing comes out. I mean, you could be parched. I sleep next to a fan, so my throat gets dry pretty easily. All kinds of things. So
Okay. On the question of Americans say they've heard an unexplained sound or music. This is an example. My mother and I would hear music and a baby crying in our old house. It was late at night. None of our neighbors were close enough to hear, and they didn't have babies. Another example, I heard a music box play on its own. It's the exact same time I felt the presence of a loved one. Now the first one's kind of interesting if this is true, because if there's not a baby around, you heard a baby. Okay, that's weird, right?
Yeah.
It's just okay.
But I've heard all kinds of noises that I know were ultimately in my head because there's no possible source, but it sounded audible. But I've had those experiences where I know that sometimes things that I hear, they sound like they're audible, but I know that they're not.
Mm-hmm.
It's kind of a weird experience where, so some of those kinds
that
of
is
things,
weird. Well, that's kind of what I was talking about a while ago when I heard this voice.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
So I don't know. Coincidences happen. Music box plays on its own. At the same time, you felt the presence of someone. I can.
Well, that could be coincidence. Okay.
Yeah, but see, I don't know what people mean by feel the presence, because because sometimes I feel like when I'm reflecting upon somebody,
mm-hmm. Like me.
No, like my father, for example.
Sorry. I tried to be funny and you went hardcore sincere. Go ahead.
No, but I'll be reflecting on my father, and sometimes you can have a memory of having a conversation with somebody that you spent so much time with, mm-hmm. that you can remember what it felt like to be in the room with that person, and that kind of experience. It's almost like, have you ever watched a show where you see somebody jump down, like a Jackie Chan movie, or somebody jump down from a tall place and they land,
everybody has that.
And then you feel that in your feet.
Yeah.
It's kind of like that kind of thing, where you kind of, you have a sense of what it was like when you were in the room having a conversation and what their presence was like when it actually happened. So I don't know what people mean by presence, because sometimes you can have a relatable experience that harkens you back, and your body has a physical event that kind of signals to your brain a similar.
And we do know that
experience.
Smells have a real serious connection to memory. So, all right, and then okay. 30% of Americans say they've smelled an unexplained odor. We just kind of talked about that, but here's an example. I often smell cigarette smoke and nobody in the house smokes, but my deceased mother-in-law did. Whenever I smell cigarettes, I believe she's visiting us. Okay, well, that's here nor there. Yeah. Smelling the cologne of my mother, stepmother, or grandfather in my room after they died, dreaming of them with realistic and current conversation. Okay.
Yeah, I've had that too, where I've had dreams where I have had these heightened realistic conversations with my dad, where he has come back from the dead just for a day, and we're talking about how he's he died, he's back, he's just wanted to hang out, and it'd be a dream that I've had several times where we're just hanging out talking, where he's back from the dead just to talk to
Did you find peace as a result of that?
Yeah, it's one of those, and when you wake up, you try to go back to sleep so that you can continue the same dream, but it never happens, But I've had that kind of dream before, where it seems like it's a very realistic conversation, because you're talking about, well, Dad, you've been dead for about 12 years now, and blah, 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 and here's what's all going on, and he's saying, yeah, I mean...
Did he say what you would have expected him to say?
Yeah, he's like, well, let's go get a burger, and we just hang out and stuff. So those dreams, I don't know why that would be counted as paranormal.
Yeah, I don't think of that. It could be, but there's no way. If
I actually had a conversation with my dad, that would be creepy, right?
Right, but the thing is, you couldn't tell in a situation like that. Even the subject can't tell. Like with a lot of these experiences, like Ashley's story. Yeah. I'll say about Ashley's story on our new podcast, it's like, I think, if she experienced that, she knows, barring epistemological questions. I mean, she knows. But if it was a dream, even she couldn't know.
But even from a Christian perspective, though, you don't have to dismiss dreams.
No, that's what I'm saying. It could be real. You just wouldn't have a way to know for sure.
Yeah, I mean, dreams and visions are a common occurrence that have significance in Scripture. Yeah. So not every dream means something, but not every dream means nothing.
Yeah,
and so it's kind of interesting how you would parse that out.
I would probably say that as a naturalist, but as a Christian, Yeah, definitely. So
Yeah.
All right. Grant Gooch says clearly this person may be mocking. I don't know. Clearly, the demons are taking over the TV in preparation for Satan Day. That happened at least in the 1980s, if not before. And I don't know what day is Satan Day. I feel like in America there probably already is a national Satan Day. If not, that's good news.
Yeah. Well, okay. For
But the TV stations have already been preparing for Satan Day
Yeah.
for a long, long time.
Yeah. I can remember when before like. I want to go back to say, when did TV start getting a lot more?
Oh, Satan Day. Satan Day is, he's talking about Halloween. Halloween is Satan Day?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
Well, I mean, but what you were probably thinking, I was thinking, when we think about TV going to the next level in terms of just in the normal course, let's make the language a little bit worse. Let's make the nudity a little bit more. I think NYPD Blue was the show.
It's funny you say that. I mentioned that the other day.
Yeah, that's
nudity on primetime television.
that would be the mark where they started pushing the boundaries of what you're going to get away with on television just for normal programming, not cable subscription, not Cinemax, not HBO or whatever, but just for regular television shows. That was when I remember you could sense that the edginess or whatever you want to call it about the boundary pushing of what they're going to do as far as sex, violence, language, all of that in regular television programming. That's when that occurred in that era.
Well, it's just
and so the demons have been,
says Jay Thomason, fellow YouTuber, says Satan Day is April Fool's Day.
That's Atheist Day.
Oh, that's Atheist Day. Yeah. Oh dear, Pritchett. Oh dear. Anyway, the nudity and the language and the just all the stuff that's on TV today, it's just it's out of control. And it's like we had this guy that went to our church when I was a teenager, and he had previously written for HBO's original programming, and you already know the story. I don't know. I'm telling you, and he mentioned that one of the things they tried to do was to every 7 minutes, I think it was, or 6 minutes or 7 minutes, every 6 or 7 minutes, there had to be, or they wanted as a general guideline, something that arrests people's attention. Nudity, shocking violence, language, like strong language that at the time you didn't just hear all the time in the workplace or anything as much. So you had to have something, or something really funny, which is usually going to be raunchy, something like that, every 6 or 7 minutes. Well, there's actually a good strategy to that. Is you should, if you're a speaker, for example, and anyone will teach you this, that you should ever so often, do something to rein people back in. We may not be the best at that here on Trinity Radio, but I'm better at it when Pritchett's here because he is that HBO content for all of you.
Yeah, so when it gets boring every 6 or 7 minutes, say something so that you don't lose them completely.
Right, and so what happened was, I think it's just like that. I think it's like every now and then they're like, well, they're not getting shocked by that anymore, or that doesn't arrest their attention. So in this version of Game of Thrones, we've got to have even more naked bodies on the screen at the same time. We've got to have even more, extreme violence, or whatever it is.
That's the trajectory of everything, because this becomes commonplace. So to have it be edgy, you have to ramp it up even more and even more, more and even more,
Yeah.
and but those things are cyclical, because at some point people are like, this is obnoxious, right? And it doesn't just have to be sex or violence or whatever. But my wife and I were watching a television series on Netflix, and it was just like a drama or a drama comedy type series or whatever. But it became so melodramatic, it almost felt like a soap opera, where they couldn't just have a normal conversation without something incredible happening all the time that was so overly dramatic. And you're just like, This is exhausting. My life is I come home, I eat dinner, we have a little bit of conversation around the table, and then we watch television, and that's what life is like. Life is not like, oh my gosh, every 10 15 seconds there's some overly dramatic instance. And if you have an overly dramatic family, I feel for you. But
trying to get used to this new chair, Pritchett.
Yeah.
I've got one of those chairs that were popular in the 90s where you sit kind of on your knees, and it's
but so far,
unnatural.
I'm one of those that I am
so far I'm doing good. You're right. Yeah.
as far as this data goes, I am one who is completely open to whatever we want to call supernatural or paranormal experiences, and also I would say that I'm a little bit higher on the skeptic meter than, like, say, the typical charismatic person would be.
Oh, well,
right?
sure, yeah.
But I'm not so overly skeptical that I dismiss every claim.
Okay, well, let's move on
so
to Rich.
far with this, when my story and your story is better than the stories that they're putting on this website, it's hard to be impressed.
That's true. Rich O'Cat says that's an idea for next week. You gentlemen can discuss the Halloween question in a Christian context.
We need Michael Jones for that.
Yeah. Halloween is not pagan. International Pagan Day is not pagan.
Yeah. But I always, it's Refaween Day, because you have to throw in Reformation Day with Halloween, and so it's Refaween Day.
Okay, 29% of Americans say they've heard the voice of someone that wasn't there. My husband and I heard and accidentally recorded a demonic voice in the stairwell of our house one evening in 2019. It was not water pipes, nor an animal in the wells. This was a protracted, forcefully articulated sentence spoken in some language that made no sense. If I had been alone, or even if we hadn't caught it on our Nest Cam, I would probably have doubted what I heard, but we have the recording.
Yeah,
and
so
it's
that's
still
like
pretty
the Sixth
chilling.
Sense, where he's listening back to the tape of the kid talking about in his interview, and he filtered it out, and he heard the guy in Latin talking, and that stuff's eerie.
Yeah,
So
that one you found that interesting, right? Okay,
it's eerie.
You'd like to hear more? You'd be like, can I hear that recording?
Yeah, because I mean, you could say that. I mean, sometimes with those kinds of things, like the tape decks that have the built-in speaker, and sometimes you can pick up other sound waves from other things or whatever, radio waves or whatever, and get lines crossed that way. I don't know, but that could happen, because I remember, like, sometimes with headphones, I remember even with headphones on some older stereo type stuff, you could all of a sudden faintly hear something in the background. Maybe it was like something from another room or another house or something. So weird things like that, radio waves get all jumbled. So
okay. And then another example, after my grandmother was killed in an automobile accident, I distinctly heard her voice telling me that she was okay and I shouldn't be upset about the details of how she died. What do you think?
Yeah, it's, again, not impressed.
Really?
They should talk to Craig Keener and go contact the people because I'm just saying
Mr. Green's scared now.
There's so many better stories than this that I've heard.
This was a survey. You don't necessarily get.
I know you get what you get, right? But
now the first interview I did for my show about this was fire.
Yeah, I know.
So, but go ahead.
But I'm just saying. And I'm not trying to come up with naturalistic explanations for
Go ahead.
That
you could do that.
But I'm just saying, I don't know.
You don't know what you're saying. All right, let's move on. 28% of Americans said they felt unexplained change in temperature. I was in a 100-year-old hotel in Brazil with abandoned floors that were accessible. As my friend and I explored, the temperature dropped and we saw orbs of light. I'm completely unimpressed.
Well,
you went in a part of an old hotel where it was cold and there was dust floating around.
Yeah, and then orbs of light should just been the blinds, the way that the blinds were.
Right.
Yeah, look at us being the naturalist shills for the day.
Yeah, well, I'm a second guesser. Lying in bed at night, suddenly I felt like someone was lying next to me. I felt a burst of cold air and a hand on my shoulder. Okay, well, now, the only thing that's shocking about this that isn't explained by you're alone in a bed, which is naturally kind of creepy at moments, and a burst of cold air because the air conditioner kicked on, is the hand on your shoulder. Now, the hand on your shoulder means you either ingested a certain amount of some substance that just confused you about what happened that night, and there was someone around that could put their hand on your shoulder, in which case we'd love to talk to you about your life and how much Jesus loves you, but I don't know if this counts as a supernatural tale, nor can we take your experience.
Yeah, anyway, this is why people need to, let me give another plug for your series on Apple Podcasts for the Supernatural series, because those are interesting stories.
Yeah.
I will admit that I am sympathetic to the naturalists when I hear things like this.
Yeah.
Because these don't.
Me too.
But when you talk to missionaries coming back from the mission field, or you talk to people who are, the indigenous people from the mission field. You're out in Papua New Guinea and you listen to some of the crazy things that they talk about happening. You're just like, maybe there's something to the fact that here in the West.
Here's the thing. Here's the thing.
Just all the supernatural activity has gotten so boring here that
if you really were in a bed alone and you really knew you were alone, and you really did feel suddenly a presence and a gust of whatever air, and then suddenly you really did feel a hand on your shoulder, and you weren't drunk or high or crazy, and that really I'm sorry, you're not supposed to use the word crazy. You understand my point. If that really did happen like that, guess what? It doesn't matter that Jonathan Pritchett and Braxton Hunter aren't necessarily impressed with that story because it's not flashy enough for us. If that happened to you, I'd feel just like you, and I'd tell somebody about it if they called and asked me I had any supernatural stories.
Yeah, and I don't think my story is necessarily impressive other than the timing of it, right?
Well, it's got an emotional part to it as well.
Yeah, but it's very interesting. But whatever it was still more impressive than all
25% of Americans, that's 1 in 4, Pritchett, I know that, say they've seen lights or other devices turn on or off without explanation. Now, on the face of it, so what? This could strike me if I'd read this in the 90s as my grandmother had her, VCR being on a cycle or something, when stuff started being on cycles or having clocks or whatever in every possible device. And she just didn't understand that comes on at a certain time or something. But then I read this. When I was young, my mom had a little girl. Oh, now that, not that one. Hold on. One night, the ghost. Okay, so this person's saying she believes when I was young, my mom had a little girl ghost that moved house to house with us. How do you know that? We need more detail. One night, the ghost turned on lights and TVs all simultaneously. Mom and I unplugged everything and went back to bed. Not 15 minutes later, it all came back on. TVs were blaring.
Yeah, that's weird. If they're all
unplugged. Now, I know what some of the atheists are thinking. They're like, well, come on now. You don't believe all this. Do you guys just believe everything you read? No. The point is, this is what I've been saying about the new podcast. You don't get to confirm some of these things. It's just the way it is. If you're going to take someone's personal account seriously, that's the deal you make. You get really detailed information that you don't get from some places, but you can't check so many of these details.
Yeah, it's also important to caveat here again that because of the way that we've talked about this when we talk about miracles in the Bible or whatever, it's something crazy that manipulates physical phenomenon, right? So we always use the example of the ground opening up at Korah, right? It's not necessarily that there was a sinkhole or earthquake or whatever. It's curiously the timing of the event. So, could you come up with a plausible way to recreate that if you understand all of the mechanics of the cosmos? Sure, you could. That's not the point. The point is that it's interesting that it occurred. It's not something that normally occurs. And so I like J.P. Holding. Do you remember him? He used to have it detecting.
Yeah,
he always liked to describe, instead of calling it a supernatural event, he always called it like a feat of strength, like God doing an incredible feat.
Except that it's like not the least a feat for him.
Right, but if you, like for gamers, when you do a feat, like
it's like a flex.
Yeah.
Right.
Like I guess I would have to say the older tabletop RPG type gamers, where you do it, you accomplish this feat. It's just something that. So something happening to physical things is not something that causes me to discount the fact that therefore there's some naturalistic explanation.
Absolutely.
Because it's physical things that are manipulated by other worldly or supernatural paranormal activity. So the fact that it involves items like televisions and lamps and whatever, that doesn't.
That's right.
Yeah.
If those given to the Son in John 6, those who listen and learn from the Father, why didn't Paul just believe Jesus' words, i.e., no blinding light?
I'm not sure I understand the question.
Now, I could interpret this question a couple of ways.
Well, part of the problem with a guy
I could interpret this as a because this may have to do with the Calvinism debate.
Oh.
And so someone could be saying something like, because what I often say is, what's happening is, well, okay, you want to be drawn to Jesus, you'll be drawn. Well, the way you're drawn is given in the passage in John 6, and that's those who hear and learn from the Father.
Come
to me. Those who heard, past tense, and learned from the Father, past tense, come to me, present tense. This was, in my opinion, during Jesus' earthly ministry, this was during a unique period in history where there were people who were worshipers of the one true God, but Jesus had just come on the scene, right? And Christianity hadn't taken off yet. So these are people that want to be faithful to God, and they don't have the issues that like the doctors of the law and the Pharisees had. And so during that time, those people that had heard and learned from Father, those kind of people, they'll be drawn to Jesus, right?
Yeah.
That's the point.
If you go back to the previous chapter, the problem was that the reason why they didn't believe in Jesus is because they didn't even listen to Moses, right?
Mm-hmm. So if you had heard the words of Moses, you would have listened to him.
Right. So the problem that Paul had prior to his conversion was that he had not listened and learned from the Father, right? His problem was not that he knew Torah and all that stuff. He was a Pharisee of Pharisees and all that. The problem is he didn't get it, just like a lot of the Jews and a lot of the Jewish Sanhedrin didn't get it, because their problem was not that they didn't, understand Bible verses from Torah and all that. Their problem is they didn't believe, right, in the way that they should have. And so, I mean, it's if you believe correctly, you live correctly, and you follow, and you hear God's voice. But the problem is they weren't right with God, so they weren't right going to immediately take to following Jesus. That's why Jesus says that they've all been taught of God. The ones who listened and learned come, right?
Right.
That's a pressure that Jesus is applying to himself. Those who you've all been taught. He's quoting Isaiah there. It's the one who listened and learned come. You can't come at all. The verse prior to that, you can't come unless you were drawn, right?
Yeah. Oh, Calvinism.
Yeah, but who are the ones drawn? Those who listen and learn come.
So if you want to be drawn, listen and learn from the Father.
Right. And I agree with you that, Jesus later says, if I be lifted up, I'll draw all men to myself. It's the same. But people say, but there were Greeks in that passage. He didn't reveal it. Yeah, because he hadn't been lifted up yet. Look at what he actually says.
Okay.
So it's not complicated.
But the twist on this is, why didn't Paul just believe if that's how it works?
He wasn't right with the Father.
Right. Well, and he has free will ultimately, and So there you go. All right. Let's get some more of these in.
The seeing an object. 22% of Americans say they have seen an object move without explanation.
Yeah, when I was young, Mom had a little. We did that one already.
Yeah,
we did that.
We purchased a home back in 2010. Within the first couple of weeks, we started to hear noises. Things moved, and certain items disappeared. The items usually came back after a few days. It's called having a cat. But sometimes it was weeks and months before items reappeared. Have seen our friend several times, shadows that moved, etc.
Okay. Well, we don't know how big those items were. There's a lot I don't know there. Well, you missed one here that I thought was pretty interesting. This is my favorite one. Several encounters, including one that turned on. This person takes these to be encounters with ghosts. Okay. Several encounters with ghosts, including one that turned on the burner on the gas stove while I was watching the knob turn from 5 feet away.
That would freak me out.
Yeah, like that's one where if he's telling the truth, okay.
Yeah.
Not that there's not possibly that some pressure on something internally made I don't know. But now someone asked real quick, Kevin asked this question.
Jesus' disciples.
Maybe I missed it, but what is the takeaway from this survey? Do you think these results should decrease a naturalist's credence in naturalism? Here's what I think. I think that we're often told it's the 21st century. Why don't you people who believe in the supernatural move, just get over it. Come on. I hear this it seems like almost every week is the 21st century, man. People don't believe this stuff anymore. And I'm sitting here saying, all right, you think that naturalism is now the default?
Yeah.
The situation is 2/3 of Americans are claiming and believing that something they experienced was paranormal, to put it in a neutral terminology, but we mean supernatural.
Believe in it. That's saying 2/3 have had experiences.
Well, and therefore believe in it.
Yeah, even more than that, probably believe in it, just not reporting to have an experience.
That's right. So the bottom line is That's how, yeah, and really that's the point. Not just believing, but these are the people who have claimed to have had some sort of an experience that they take to be supernatural.
Yeah.
Does that mean that they did? No, but it is to say, and what it it is to say, look at how prevalent these claims are. Now you say, well, that would be like a fallacy, like a popularity fallacy or something. Look, here's the thing that we're just saying. Don't put it into some kind of deductive argument. Notice it as a person. Just say,
also,
it could be a part of a cumulative case. You could say, isn't it interesting?
Else is a non sequitur, though?
And it's what we might
some
expect.
Are false, therefore they're all false.
Well, right.
That's fallacious.
Yeah.
It doesn't follow at all. So,
but we would expect, if the supernatural is real, that most people would claim to have experienced the supernatural in some way.
Yes.
And most people in America do.
Yes.
So,
and Christianity can account for that.
So, I mean, you don't have to like that.
Account for why that occurs.
You could say, though,
other worldviews can account for it as well, but I'm just saying Christianity can account for that.
Worldviews always answer questions. It's whose answer is the most plausible.
Right.
And so the answer that a skeptic could give to this, and I'll grant them this, and this would be a fair criticism to a lot of these stories. They could say, okay, well, first of all, we don't have any proof that any of this happened. We don't have any evidence that any of these people are even real. The best we can do is to say that YouGov America is probably a trustworthy enough agency that this does in some measure represent real survey data that they collected. But we can't go beyond that. It could have been just people saying whatever they wanted to say. Okay, that's true. And then second, some of these things, even given that, can easily be explained, really easily. Yeah. So I get that. That could be your explanation. My explanation is these are just some of the examples. Obviously, they didn't give us all the examples. They probably picked ones they thought were most interesting, or maybe they picked ones that they thought represented the middle of the pack. I don't know. But the bottom of the line is, the fact on the table is most people in America think the supernatural experiences are real.
Yeah, and again, not all atheists are metaphysical naturalists. So atheists, too, have reported strange and crazy phenomenon. Wiccans, you could say many of them identify as atheists with respect to a god or gods, but they believe in paranormal or supernatural type stuff. So,
Okay, this one's interesting. Elizabeth Maines says, by the way, Elizabeth, are you the one that we've spoken with before who I think is an actress? I think so, and I think you were going to tell us when a certain thing might happen related to your acting career. It could be that you're not, and I've just weirded you out with everything I just said. In any case, hey, Braxton and Pritchett, ! My own paranormal experience, : I was there when a cross that was hanging on the wall flew across the room. Yeah, never slept over at my friend's house again.
Yeah, I wouldn't either.
Lol.
That'd be weird. If a cross just comes off the wall and flies across the room, that's what those demons throwing tantrums with the Christian.
We just had someone from our research data group provide us a better story than anything we've read in this survey data yet.
Yeah. That would freak me out.
Thank you for that.
See,
Elizabeth.
Those are the kind of things that I had the gust of wind and the door open, which was actually on their list. I don't have any cool stories like that. That would freak me out, though.
Yeah. Okay. So
speaking of ghosts, I mean, it's interesting that even in the New Testament, when they saw Jesus walking on water, their first instinct was to think that it was a ghost, right?
Like, whoa, what? What's going on? Yeah, that's what you.
So their worldview accounted for the existence of ghosts, and ghosts' existence or non-existence was never corrected by anybody.
Right. Yes, right.
It's just like
fair point.
Yeah.
There was an unusual incident in a restaurant.
Oh, by the way, ghosts aren't real.
There was an unusual incident in a restaurant where I worked involving objects moving where they weren't supposed to. Okay. That kind of stuff is interesting. 20% of Americans say they've seen doors open or close without explanation. You said you had that. So this person says, I went to my friend's house. She reportedly had seen many ghosts in her house. She said that they slammed the kitchen doors, and I agreed with her. Although I had my doubts, hours after I got there, we were sitting in the kitchen and her cupboard doors started opening and slamming shut. It was very scary. There have been a couple of times, another person says, when I was pet sitting at my grandma's and had the animals with me in the room and heard doors and drawers being opened and shut. 19% of Americans say they've seen a spirit or a ghost. This is only one of many paranormal experiences I've had. This happened 50 years ago and is something I will never forget, someone says. A friend's father had passed away and I was spending the night at their home. I was apparently thirsty and woke in the middle of the night to get a drink of water. When I sat up in bed, I saw the deceased man standing in the doorway of the room I was sleeping in. I turned to get my bathrobe at the foot of the bed, and when I looked back, he was gone. What I learned the next day is that I had been sleeping in his room. This could go on. I mean, we could keep reading that. Well, we're actually almost at the bottom. We're almost at the bottom. Let's just, all right, paranormal abilities, okay? 2 in 5 Americans, 39%, say they have at least one of 7 paranormal abilities asked about. The largest share, 24%, say they have the ability to psychically sense other emotions or auras. Those people live in California primarily. No, it doesn't say that. I'm just... I heard someone recently say, when we did the Rhett and Link episode, they were talking about how in California, you trip on a curb, you're just about going to land in a crystal shop. But it's going to energy, spiritual energy. The next most common ability claimed by 15% of Americans is hearing voices of sounds from spirits or ghosts. Between 12 and 13% of people believe they can hear either psychically. I don't believe they're doing any of that. I don't believe any of that's happening, Pritchett. And if it does, I believe that they're interacting with stuff they shouldn't be interacting with.
Yeah.
So that was kind of fun.
Okay, but if you speak in tongues, if you have the power of healing and stuff, those are the charismatic gifts could be construed as in, paranormal or supernatural or whatever. So, a lot of people claim to have those gifts.
Yeah.
So.
Well, Pritchett, we had, okay, you remember Elizabeth Maines from 5 minutes ago?
Yes.
She says, yes. I take it that means that she is that actress we were talking about.
Yeah.
And she says, didn't fall, flew, it got distance.
See, that would freak me out.
If you're a famous actress like Elizabeth Maines who watches Trinity Radio, ayo, hey, we're happy about that.
That would freak me out too. But yeah, I would not want to be a famous actor.
Don't worry.
Or would I want to watch Trinity Radio? But that's a different story. But no, here's my takeaway from this. I like better supernatural stories, even if I don't believe them, than the ones that you presented with me today with.
What do you think about Derek Baylor's? It says, Braxton, I'm going to post about this on Facebook later, but when I was a kid, I hung a dream catcher above my bed and was plagued with nightmares for a while. Nightmares went away as soon as I got rid of it. Don't get another one, man. And don't anyone tell me I'm talking about...
Unless you're a fan of nightmares. I mean,
somebody.
Nightmares, some people enjoy nightmares.
Pritchett, if the dream is causing you, if the dream catcher is causing you nightmares, that's something bad's happening there. Right? Burn it. You say, well, he's a freak now. He's gone too far. No. Burn that nightmare-causing dream catcher. Yeah. Oh, my gosh.
I mean... The stories of demon possession and exorcism and all that's way cooler than...
Don't burn your dream catchers. I'm afraid we're going to set America on fire.
Yeah.
Don't do that. Just go throw it away responsibly.
There's a lot cooler stories of paranormal activities than the ones they just... See, you know what I think that they did, though? When they...
Or if you really don't think it's real, go put the dream catcher above someone else's bed that's willing to participate.
Don't bring that...
No, don't do
my
that.
house.
That's a stupid
don't
idea.
you put
Get
that
rid
in
of
the
it.
Post office.
Throw
and
it
send
away.
to Trinity Radio.
Throw it away.
I don't need that.
Break it.
Yeah.
Throw it away. Don't mess with pagan stuff.
Yeah.
Right?
I wonder if YouGov America decided to put the most benign story quotes in their survey.
Well, they could have
data.
picked the middle of the pack. You know.
Okay, so some were even less.
Yeah. Well, I don't know how. I mean, some of them were about as mundane as can be.
Yeah.
But.
Yeah, because I've heard crazier stories than that. So I've heard crazier stories from that within Christendom and from occultists, right? Like I said, though I'm a charismatic Christian and I don't have any of the cool gifts. I seek them, but I don't discount the possibility of it. But I also am skeptical enough that I don't believe every story. I don't have to believe every story to affirm the possibility that stories like that could be true, right? But I don't have to dismiss all paranormal or supernatural or occultish activity ever reported anywhere because I have to commit myself to naturalist worldview. And when you've made that commitment, you've already decided that none of it can be true, which means you are closing yourself off to knowledge, right? Because if at least one of those things is true, the metaphysical naturalism is false.
So here we go. Kevin asks a really good quote. We love Kevin. Says, if you suppose that this survey should decrease one's credence in naturalism, do you suppose the works of James Randi and similar studies should increase one's credence in naturalism? James Randi, I think he's talking about like the prayer studies and the or like where they've studied things like that and found it to be all right, maybe it's not the prayer studies. Maybe he's talking the James Randall, it's like a foundation or something connected with that. Dillahunty talks about it a lot. I don't know. Let me tell you this. You may be talking about like studies that are supposed to show that supernatural isn't happening or something. But if it's the prayer studies, the Bible, if Christianity is true, the Bible gives you all kinds of caveats that have to do with prayer. Pray in Jesus' name, which of course, if you know the context, means ask for things that your patron would want you to ask for, and that he would want accomplished. And you want the effectual fervent prayer of a righteous person avails much. So you need to be a person who's right with God when you're praying. These are all important things. These prayer studies are set up for a purpose that is not what these people are praying. It's made it not personal, but a clinical study rather than the prayers. That changes the complete nature of the prayer. Plus, in any of these studies, people are praying for these people all the time, everywhere, so you can't get a clean cut that way. And also a lot of problems. I don't know who it was I was just talking to recently about this, talking about some of the problems with the studies. You might not be talking about that. What you might be talking about is, what about these people that are like faith healers that we know are false? Who is that guy, Peter Popoff? Is that the guy that ended up with the thing in his ear? Is that might not be right. I don't know. I don't want to name names. That may not be right. But whoever, those kind of things, should that decrease? What I would say is, when we go into, when we try to understand things about medicine, we find out sometimes that there are herbs or herbal remedies and natural things that tribes people have used for centuries, like aloe vera, for example. And we find out, they were right. Look at this. They were right. This actually does work. And wow, does it really work? And how did they figure this out? And that kind of thing. And then you find them doing some weird stuff, like throwing some dirt in their ear, and that doesn't do anything. There's nothing to that, right? That's not a real thing. I'm just giving an example. And just in that same way, if you're looking at examples of or claims about the supernatural, what you should come away with, the people who've got the herbal remedies and stuff, is you shouldn't come away and say, well, apparently because there are so many scam herbal remedies, there are no good herbal remedies, and we shouldn't listen to anything that ancient peoples or tribesmen would tell us about the medicinal properties of some of these things. No, you would just come to know people abuse this and take advantage of people with it. So make sure you're being careful. But one thing is, everybody around here seems to agree that there's something to the use of some herbal remedies. And a similar thing is how I would think you would think about this in the world today. You'd say, look, if 2/3 of Americans, and we're talking about in the Western world, that's still the case, as everything that's been done has still not taken supernaturalism away from people in the Western world. And you should say, okay, if that's here and everywhere else they believe in the supernatural, so here's the situation. It sure seems like there's something going on here that's real. Now, there's a bunch of scam artists, and there's a bunch of people I trust that are claiming this. So it seems like there's something real going on. We just have to be cautious about it.
Yeah, but I mean, how much information? I think that it's fair to say that if you're exposed yourself to information that is friendlier to supernatural claims, and you're exposing yourself to information that is not friendly to supernatural claims and seeks to debunk every claim possibly they could make, your credence is going to go up if your natural disposition is, I'm a metaphysical naturalist. If that's your commitment, if that's your pre-commitment, like my pre-commitment is Christianity's true.
Yeah.
Which means that I don't have to say no to any other thing, supernatural event that even has nothing to do with Christianity. So, if you're looking for more evidence, confirmation bias, and whatever you're looking for, then sure, that stuff's going to make your credence in naturalism go up, obviously, because you've already decided that that's most consistent with the atheist worldview. That I agree with atheists. that's why the Christian versus atheist and blah, blah, those debates are so boring. If there's a debate out there between an atheist who is not a naturalist and an atheist who is a naturalist, and I would like to watch that debate because, I mean, that seems to me more interesting than having another "Does God exist?" debate between a theist and a those. That's so.
On
boring.
2020 Hallows Eve, while I was reading the Bible in full view of this, and no one else was in the room besides me. This is from Sarah Fuffer. I'm sorry, Sarah. Fuffer. I know you because we've interacted here, but I've never pronounced your name. Fuffer. Or maybe if I did, it was wrong then too. Probably.
I'm going with Fuffer, which means I'm probably wrong because I just.
Sarah P. says, on 2020 Hallows Eve, while I was reading the Bible in full view, I heard the power switch to the microwave turn on and the microwave beep on.
See, that would just irritate me.
Well, the thing is, the demons wouldn't scare you. They just annoy you. Is that what it is?
Try to distract you from trying to read Scripture.
Yeah. She was reading Scripture.
Yeah.
Sarah P.
See, context matters. Though, I'm fond of saying that you should never attribute to demons that which can be attributed to kittens. So, you never know. If you don't have a cat, though, yeah, it's weird.
All right.
It would irritate me.
So let's do some more stuff from throughout the show so far. Kevin says, I lost my grandmother last week.
I'm sorry to hear that.
Me too. And she was essentially the only family member who never treated me different after I came out as a non-Catholic. Nothing supernatural here. I just miss her already. Well, we hurt with you.
Oh, man, I know that. I have no living grandmothers. It sucks. Grandmas are the best.
Well, I don't want to, Kevin, I hope you know, I hope we're friends enough, because we are. I hope we're friends enough that I can say this, but, and I just hope you keep watching and stuff, because I think you can see her again.
I do too.
Okay, and we got that, and we got, easy now. There's an extreme actual condition that occurs when people get exhausted. They can hear loud booms as they drift to sleep, and it's called exploding head syndrome, I think it is.
Yeah.
Interesting. Tim Doran is impressed with us. Uber Scheiser asks an interesting question. Have you had supernatural experiences when you were not in a horrible state? Do more supernatural experiences occur in times of desperation and despair more than times of joy?
See, I haven't, but I wasn't in a time of just desperation or despair or whatever when my dad died. But it wasn't necessarily a time of joy either, right? But I wasn't in despair. As Christians, we don't grieve as those without hope. But
1 Thessalonians 4.
I have not, but it seems like if you're just reading your Bible and all of a sudden your microwave starts going nuts, or you're just kind of hanging out at a friend's house and a cross starts flying across the room, you're not in either one of those states either. Right?
I just want people to notice that this is so incredibly common.
So some people have had these experiences, I'm sure, where there's no sort of extreme emotional thing going on.
Yeah, they do. But I want people to notice how common it is that we talk about supernatural experience. This is not the first time this has happened. It happened yesterday with the video I did with Andy.
Yeah.
We talk about supernatural experience. Like, hey, look, there's some people that claim to have had supernatural experiences. And the whole chat, in unfortunately a relatively small-sized chat, is going, I'll tell you about mine.
Yeah.
That's how prevalent the claims are. And not from just, gullible, crazy
one
people.
Is true, then naturalism is false. But you just need one, which the resurrection handles that business anyway. But I'm just saying, you just need one.
Kenneth Soto says, scientists recently found, thank you for the super chat, scientists recently found a bacteria that is visible to the naked eye. The scientists said it was the equivalent of finding a human the size of Mount Everest. The world is a strange place.
Yes, it is. That just when we talk about probability, right? Mm-hmm. You just need one of those things to be true for your whole metaphysical naturalism to go bye-bye, right? One paranormal, supernatural, anything, and you're done, right? I think the odds are way favor a supernatural.
Well, I mean, because here's what you're saying. Yeah. To give some more flesh to what you're saying, because this is something that's talked about in arguments from religious experience of certain sorts. But like, let's say there's a big debate and thousands of people are on one side of the debate and thousands are on the other, and what they're arguing about is whether or not Australia exists. There are no Australians in this bunch. There are, most of the 1,000 on one side says they've been to Australia. Okay, right? All the 1,000 on the other side are saying, I don't believe in Australia. You're lying. There is no Australia. You're lying.
They're all the flat earthers.
Let's say a bunch of those people that say they've been to Australia so they know it's real are lying, right? Let's say most of them are lying. Let's say 90% are lying. Let's say all but one is lying.
Yeah.
If one person really set foot on Australian soil, then we can know that Australia is real.
Yes.
But it is not true that if one person has never set their foot on Australian soil,
that it doesn't exist.
That it means it doesn't exist.
Right.
Right. That's important.
So I wouldn't. Can experiences be misinterpreted? Sure. Braxton and I can dismiss a lot of these supernatural claims.
I'll give you an experience that you all have misinterpreted online for years. We've joked about Pritchett not being the tallest guy in the world, although he has a tall torso, oddly. Because when we sit, he's taller than me, but when we stand, I'm much taller than him. So, but it's actually that he's way bigger than all of us, because he's talking about they discovered and it's like a human the size of Mount Everest. You're actually a human that is maybe not the size of Mount Everest, but the size of, you're like, I don't know, we'd say 80 feet tall, and we've just positioned everything around you to make up for that. So Risk Endeavors says, how are the top atheists of today reacting to the supernatural / NDEs, if at all? Well, you can read the journal articles. I forget the name of the place. It's like IANS or something. It's like INDAAS or something. There's a website that has collected all the research on near-death experiences that they can get their hands on. And so there's a lot of interaction between people about particular cases. And you can read like a journal article saying, here's the explanation, and it's pro-NDE type thing, or at least it makes sense. And there's another journal article interacting and saying, no, it's not like that. You can't say that because this and that. And they kind of argue back and forth. You can find some places like that. As far as just atheists directly interacting with it, I don't really know. Just the YouTubers and stuff that I see, and they mostly dismiss it. I do know that...
most of the YouTube atheist community are metaphysical naturalists, right?
Before I go on, I was going to say Digital Gnosis, Nathan Ormond and James Fodor. They did like 4 hours on near-death experiences. So and I think they took some of the main ones and tried to poke holes in them. So, but that's all I don't know.
But the overwhelming atheist YouTuber community that is in this sort of wheelhouse of counter apologetics, they're all metaphysical naturalists, right?
Do what?
They're all metaphysical. There's not a single one of those atheists that actually believe in the supernatural of any kind.
Right. Well, it might say they're agnostic or something.
Right. Like I said, that's the debate I'm interested in. Atheist against atheists on that question.
My best friend's father-in-law, thank you for the super chat, Derek, was a missionary in Africa for 19 years. The crazy things he saw are mind-boggling. Naturalism isn't a thing there.
Yeah, that's true.
Naturalism
isn't a thing in a lot of places.
When I went to the Bahamas, they were like, I was there suffering for the Lord, preaching at a large church there, and staying in a beautiful hotel that they kept me in, but I have stayed in plenty of garbage.
How awful,
hotels.
Man.
Yeah, I was just really suffering. Somebody had to do it, I know. But one of the local guys there, I was asking about the atheist population, and at that time, this has been several years ago, he said, man, we don't have it. I said, you don't have atheists here? He's like, no, I mean, we have atheists. He's like, but look around you, man. It's like, look at the trees. I'm like, yeah, I mean, you're in the Bahamas, the water, the trees, everything.
Speaking of which, look at the trees.
Look at the trees. I decided, I was driving down the road the other day, we need to get what do you call a guy who studies trees? Starts with a D, something like that.
Okay.
We need to get one of those guys or gals on here, and we need to ask them about design elements in trees. Do a whole show, look at the trees.
Yeah, we do.
All right. So
now I'm feeling guilty of having dropped the tree in my backyard.
yeah, it's God's beautiful creation. It's more complex than Notre Dame, and you just
Well, after having one fall on your house, you don't want the other one to be next. So.
Slam RN says, I sometimes hear a specific person calling my name who is not around, and Slam RN is no joke, y'all.
Yeah, that's weird. Yes, people from the medical community, scientists and stuff, they are not all naturalists.
Yeah, Slam RN, I think, is a medical professional, hence the RN, right?
It's in the RN.
What do you do with Marian apparitions as Protestants? Do you have firsthand evidence, experience of the demonic, or do you have secondhand testimony of an exorcism or the like?
Again, I could file it away under,
Well, Marian apparitions, like,
they're interesting.
I don't have anything against Fatima. Is that the one?
Yeah.
There was a bright light in the sky, and it was there for a long time, and all that. People came, and thousands upon thousands saw it, or whatever. That one impresses me, but I'm wondering there, like, why. And I'm sure a Catholic can tell me.
And the shroud sure does.
I'm sure a Catholic. Well, yeah, but that's not.
Yeah,
I take it this person is asking me about this initially because we're not Catholic. They say as Protestants, I don't have to be. It doesn't matter that I'm a Protestant about the shroud, but about Marian apparitions, like, wouldn't that count in favor of Catholicism? I'm saying I'm sure a Catholic could tell me this in a heartbeat. But with the Fatima thing, I watched a movie about it. Why would someone? Is it necessary that we take that to be Mary? Is what I want to know.
Yeah. Like a freaky occurrence, I file it under, that's something,
Evidence of the supernatural, if it happened, is what it is.
But demonic, I leave that open as a possibility.
Yeah. And then but I don't think they were blending those. I think they were also asking a second question. Do you have firsthand?
I think there are, obviously as a Christian, I believe that exorcisms have occurred because they occurred in the first century during Jesus' ministry. Have they occurred since? I believe that yes. How often? Don't know. Have they occurred?
I met a knockout woman.
Stories that I found believable about exorcisms? Yes.
I met a knockout woman, and she agreed to marry me, not just as a joke, but like today, we're still married. There's simply no natural explanation for this.
You know what?
There is, because you're a wonderful human being.
I'm going to agree because have you seen Richard?
He's got a beautiful wife. Are you going to say he married up? Is that
what? Yeah. If we want to understate it, that he married up.
But he is a guy who's in good shape, and he is got a beautiful.
The personality makes up
beautiful
so much
personality
for the fact that he's no more attractive than I am, which means we're pretty, we're in the same boat. So I don't. So yeah. But yeah, there is no naturalistic explanation for that.
This comment just makes me happy. Yes, grandmas are the best, and God's grace is more best. Amen.
Yes. Man, I wish I had at least. I have my wife's grandmother's still alive, so that's.
Slam RN, he wants to know, if I change my mind and convert because of the microwave story, would you at least be slightly disappointed in me?
Not at all, because there are a bit stranger conversions than that, my friend.
Yeah, but this is a good question. Like, if someone becomes an atheist for a stupid reason, we're all going to be like, that's a dumb reason to become an atheist. That's wrong. And ostensibly, there would be other atheists who would say, really, for real, like, I'm an atheist, but that's not a good reason to be an atheist. Like, if he becomes a Christian,
split in three ways and said, "Oh, the Trinity," right? And then that Francis Collins story where he saw the waterfall split. Into
yeah, but that came at the end of a lot of other stuff.
Well. If somebody's converting over the microwave story,
there's more content to that story.
Right, exactly.
Yeah, like, tell me more, Richard. Did you just say 5 seconds before that, God, if you're real, would you make my microwave ding and swing open or whatever it did? So, that
yeah,
would...
no. There's been stranger stuff than that. So, no, I would not be slightly disappointed. What would disappoint me is if someone never converted. I want to be in... I want to be in the new heavens and new earth with as many people as possible, including Kevin, including Richard, including we are the ones who want to hang out with you for all eternity, and you're like, nah.
If Australia was real, this is a great comment. I'm going to tell you why. If Australia was real, then how have the people who live there not fallen off the earth yet? Checkmate, atheist. What? Yeah. What does that have to do with atheism?
Braxton does believe in the existence of Australia. He just denies the existence of kangaroos.
Yeah, I've been to Australia.
Yes.
Part of the reason I deny the existence of kangaroos
see a single
is
one.
because but turn my own logic on me and just go a stage deeper than Australia itself. If one of the thousands of people who claim to have seen real, living, breathing kangaroos have seen them, then they do exist.
Your whole worldview is debunked.
But it's not the case that if one American goes to Australia and doesn't see a kangaroo, then they don't exist.
But you're convinced that right now that they don't.
But here's the thing. Despite logic and everything else, I remain unconvinced. I don't say that they don't exist. I've changed. I've matured.
You lack in a belief.
I lack a belief
that they do exist.
That kangaroos exist.
There you go.
I mean, I went there and they had cages around the fronts of all their cars. They're like, oh, you're totally going to see them because they're like deer in America. Like, you'll see them even if we don't hit them. You probably will end up hitting one or be in a car. Oh, awesome. Let's do this. Nothing. Get up early, they said. And good. Now, I did see some freaky looking snake I've never seen. And they kept me in a trailer, basically, that was the nicest thing at this camp.
Did the snake have legs?
No.
Oh, because that would disprove Ken Ham.
Oh, yeah, no, didn't have legs. But, there'd be some Australian atheist already found that snake if that was.
Right.
But I did spray bug killer all over this place they put me in, and every imaginable Jurassic Park animal came out of the walls. A spider that was, I think we put it on Trinity Radio at the time. But anyway, those are my thoughts.
And somebody says, I have had the same... I choose Greenland since nobody knows anyone from Greenland. You know, I don't know anyone from Greenland.
I don't either. And I know a lot of people.
All right. Well, folks, looks like we're coming to the end. Once again, the saddest part of your Friday, best part of mine. So, thank you for watching. We appreciate you being here. We thank you especially for the super chats, which we have one to say before we go. Kenneth Soto, thank you very much. I'll look at Tim the Ancient following suit. Thought on the idea that God should be thought of as a theory. We can't prove it, but it explains a lot of. It's rational to say that God is probable, but to say that he actually exists is not rational. Oh, totally disagree, but thank you for the money on that.
It depends on what level of certainty you require in order to claim you have knowledge of something. You could probably look at a chair that you've never sat in before and say, a wooden chair, and say, I know that when I sit in that chair, it won't break. Now, are you certain of that? No, but it's a claim to knowledge, and nobody's going to bat an eye because it is something you can kind of claim to know. It's not that it's impossible you could be wrong, right?
Yeah.
So I don't claim to have Cartesian certainty about God's existence or the truth of Christianity, but I claim to know that it's true.
Tim the Ancient has a super chat, and he says, why do demons obey commands made in the name of Christ when they have no allegiance to him? Why not disobey and just stay in their victim? Well, I imagine if just any old Tom, Dick, or Harry, or Sally decided to say, in the name of Jesus, come out.
Paul, I know, and Jesus, I know, but who are you?
Yeah.
Right.
So,
Jesus is the King of all kings. He has authority over the cosmos. And if he wants to command a demon to do something, the demon, I take it that it's not within the power of the demon to resist.
Yeah. And if God wants to use you in the name of Christ to pull out one, it's going to happen. And if not, it'll remain in the victim because God and you are not working together on that. So it's the Holy Spirit that enables all of these abilities, right? And if you're not in sync with the Holy Spirit, and yes, believers can quench the Holy Spirit, which is, you never know when God's going to need you to cast a demon out. So always
put that on a t-shirt.
Yeah. So
you
always stay filled with the Holy Spirit, friends. So
be not drunk on wine, but be filled with the Spirit. And with that, we'll see you next time on Trinity Radio.